Hey, what is up guys? So welcome to episode 6 of ReaperCast, and with the whole voting thing, I was expecting to be a clear definitive winner, though I guess that's not the case at all. We actually find that there's a 50-50% I guess vote between you guys, so from that I figured, you know what, I'm just gonna have to do 2 videos, and yeah, they're gonna be pretty much back to back from each other. Of course, one being episode 6, one episode 7. But the point of these whole polls that I was meant to do was that it was meant to allow you guys to vote which video you wanted to see first. So I'm just gonna go with whatever's easier, and I figured this one because it has much shorter list of options, and that would definitely be something that I could do more sooner, and yeah, we'll just go along with that. And in episode 7, I guess we'll be ranking the GX characters. But with that being said, I'm ranking only the card games that I actually have encountered, or the ones that I actually know to a fair amount or a fair degree. I don't want to actually bring up games that are completely random to the point where I can't even talk about it at all. So, just because I don't play a few of these games does not actually mean that I don't know anything about them, because there's obviously different things to consider. For example, something as simple as nostalgia appeal could definitely still be a factor in ranking these particular card games. We could rank them based on the gameplay itself, how fun it is, how complex it is, the learning curve. Just many different factors can influence how a game could be listed or ranked in this particular case. So with that being said, I'll just go over a few of them. We have 26 different card games here, and I don't know, I guess you guys will get a good idea of what we're doing here, but if you don't want to hear me ramble on about this, then just skip ahead, and you will actually get to see the rankings. But we obviously have Yu-Gi-Oh!, we have Magic, we have Dragon Ball Super, the card game. Don't get confused with the Dragon Ball Z card game, which is actually, so I'll just put them all together right here. So yeah, one of them was made by Panini, which didn't succeed for quite a bit. But the most recent one is Dragon Ball Super, and that is the one that is currently, I guess, still ongoing. We have Duel Masters, of course. We have Bakugan, both versions. We have the old version and we have the new one. So the new one is Battle Planet, and the old one is obviously the Battle Brawlers, everything that followed afterwards. We have Pokemon, of course. We have a card game that I don't think many people actually know about. It's called ZX, Zillions of Enemies. This is more of a game popular in Asian countries. So if you guys actually go to Asian card stores, I have a few friends who are from different Asian countries, and they tell me a lot about their experiences with people playing these, and of course they've also engaged in the game as well. I personally haven't, but I'll still be able to give an opinion because I have actually seen them crack boxes open, and I've seen the cards before. We obviously have Chaotic. I couldn't actually forget about this. This was definitely a good card game from back in the day. We also have Battle Spirits. This is probably not as well known as well, but again, it's like ZX. It's popular in a lot of the Asian countries, and I'll get to it later on. But it's very interesting indeed to include in this list. We have My Little Pony. We have Vanguard, of course. We have Lego Ninjago. I figured I want to put that there because technically it is a card game. You're trying to collect different cards, so it was well worth putting there. We have Wii Cross, which, I really wish that I had properly planned out how I would actually input these images, but hopefully as I'm explaining along and moving them around, you guys will actually know what I'm talking about. We also have Dragonborn. Dragonborn is by the same creators of Vanguard and Y Schwartz, so definitely something that it's not as popular, but I'm pretty sure that it might have got a bit of people's attention. We obviously have Future Card Buddyfight. We have Hearthstone. I'm including this because although it's a mobile game, it is still a card game, and I think it's popular enough that people know what it is. We have Weiss Schwarz, of course, we have Force of Will, we have Luck and Logic, we have Naruto, the CCG. This was a very old card game, so if you guys don't remember it, then it's fine, but I will include it here because I actually own the cards myself, and I've played the game before. We also have Kaijudo, which is technically Duel Masters, but since they're both two different creations, I'm going to consider them as separate entities. We also have One Piece, the collectible card game as well. Came out around the same time as Naruto, but obviously it didn't last as long. We also have the new Naruto / Boruto card game. That's definitely something that's also piqued a bit of interest. And lastly, I'm including Star Wars X-Wing miniatures. Might be a little controversial for you guys, but I do believe that it is justified to put here. I mean, technically we are using cards, it's just that it's not necessarily a gameplay, so I don't know, you guys might have a bit of mixed opinions about this, but I'm just going to include it anyway. It looks even, but these are the 26 games that we'll be ranking. If there's anything I missed out, it's probably because I don't know enough about it, or I don't know anything at all. So if you guys want to include it in your own list in the comment section down below, then feel free to do that, because that's definitely going to be really awesome. I'm curious to know about different kinds of card games. For example, if you're wondering, I know about Legend of the Five Rings, I know about Netrunner, there's all these other different card games as well, but I just never engaged into these games enough for me to actually know, or to be even to talk about any of them for even 10 seconds, even if I was trying to, because I've never even seen the card work of these, the card artwork. So yeah, but without further ado, I'm just going to get started right now. So to begin, I want to actually start off with things that are a bit more lesser known. So I'm actually going to begin with the Dragon Ball Z card game. This particular game was made by Panini, and while it actually did include some super particular characters, so we actually had a card for Beerus, I don't remember, but it should have included one, but it didn't last for long. It eventually ended, and it was just poorly managed by the team. So it's a particular reason why they didn't last long. The card artwork is okay, it's not particularly amazing, but I think, should I give it an E? I think that's a bit harsh, is it? I'm going to give it an E for now, because I think the artwork is not as enticing as plenty of the other card games that we're about to talk here, and the company just had pretty poor management to promote it, to market it. So because of that, I'm thinking it would be more well suited towards this place. Not to mention, had the card game or the gameplay itself been a little bit better, then it probably would have taken off, just like Yu-Gi-Oh or Magic. But for that, I have to put it at E, because I never fully got into it. It always just piqued my interest, and I've always just explored different card artworks for it, but overall, the whole design of the gameplay, the card design itself, not particularly the artwork, it was just not enough for me to get into. But moving on, we also have here Dragon Ball Super. Now this one was made by Bandai, definitely a huge improvement, definitely enjoy it. Well, I'm not particularly into playing the card game itself, but the game itself is a bit more complex. Definitely artwork is much better, design is much better, everything is just way superior than the one by Panini. So I think it does deserve a place in B. Might put it in C, but I just think that the artwork is definitely on another level here. It's just so good. I really do like it. I mean, I could just buy the cards itself just to use as tokens for Yu-Gi-Oh or even Vanguard, because I don't know, the card game artwork, it's quite amazing. And right now Super, I think it's still in people's minds. I mean, despite the fact that the anime's ended, I think a lot of people still like to talk about Dragon Ball, particularly Super. So, yeah, definitely deserves a place in B for now. Probably just on the cusp of it. Might drop down to C later on, depending on how the list goes. But moving on, let's actually talk about ZX. ZX is obviously a hard game that, let me just say, the artwork is actually quite amazing. Definitely something that could be well worth getting into if you're just interested in the artwork alone. That being said, the problem why this game never took off is that most people are preferring to play with the Japanese cards instead, so rarely will you see people actually buying the English cards. It just seems to be a more budget variant or budget option for people to go into and continue the way it is. But had it been marketed more properly and more people were actually playing the English versions, then it would definitely take off. But we could definitely see that there are certain issues there. But on artwork alone, definitely quite amazing. Would I put it in C? It's not as big. I don't consider this as big. So personally, I put it in D. I think it's a fair choice here. The artwork is really what draws me into it, but overall, nothing else really gets me into the game itself, whereas the gameplay is not particularly something that I could see myself playing on a long-term basis, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Not to mention, I can't really read Japanese, so that's just something that you might have to get used to if you're actually trying to get into a game like ZX. Moving on, we have here Chaotic. Chaotic, I'm just going to put it straight up as a C class. I think a lot of people definitely like it, mostly for nostalgia, but obviously the game didn't keep up for long. Just poorly, I guess, continued on by their company, and it was backed up by a particular animation show, so I think C is definitely a very fair choice for it. But not going to delve too much into it. The artwork's okay. Not as great as ZX. You should definitely search up ZX card artwork. It's incredibly amazing, but I'm not gonna delve too further into these two ones. Moving on, we have Battle Spirits. There's an anime that's actually focused around Battle Spirits. Definitely quite amazing. I would say that it would remind you a bit of Buddyfight if you guys have actually indulged in that. But aside from that, Battle Spirits was, again, a similar case as ZX. It just never took off, and it was targeted for a more younger audience and not so much an older audience. Card artwork is, yeah, like I said, not as great as ZX, but I think putting it anywhere below D is going to be a bit too, I don't know, it's a bit too harsh. So D, it's a good place. It's not a game I would necessarily play, but I do appreciate the different designs and aspects of it. We also have here My Little Pony. This game genuinely almost got into the game. I mean, I saw the game in card stores and I was actually thinking, should I actually get into this game? The only problem was not as many people were playing it. It's similar to the case of all these games we've been talking about so far. Not enough of a community for me to worth buying these cards, and because of that, I'm not going to be getting into the game. Though at one point I seriously considered whether or not I should get into the game because it seemed like a fun game. The rules weren't too bad, a bit more complex than Yu-Gi-Oh, I would say, but in terms of learning curve, once you actually play it, it is more simple than Yu-Gi-Oh. But that being said, the lack of community is really the thing that's putting me off from continuing on with, or rather getting into the game. But overall, I do think it deserves it could get a B tier, I mean, but I'm gonna put it at C tier for now, but on the really high point of a C tier. But yeah, definitely an interesting game. Now, just crossing off to something else, we have here Wixos or WeCross. So this game is based off an anime, and it is very interesting. If you guys actually watch the anime, so it's called Wixos, Wixoss. So if you actually just search that up and watch the anime, it's actually not too bad. But the card game itself, artwork is also very amazing, definitely. It's not as great as ZX in terms of artwork, but it is pretty close. So on artwork alone, I'd put it at D. Gameplay itself and the whole card design and whole concept behind it with the anime backing it up, it does put it way higher than the ZX. But overall, it's just not as popular. It has the similar scenario as ZX and Battle Spirits, where the community just isn't as big for this particular game, and it's really the one thing that doesn't drive you into getting in if you know that there's a very small community for it. And I do believe that most people also play with the Japanese version and not the English version, so it is kind of a limiting factor there as well. So I'm going to put it above ZX, but it definitely is not necessarily a bad place, but I just don't see myself putting it into a C tier class. Next here we have Dragonborn. Dragonborn is from the creators of Vanguard. So the creators actually Bushiroad with another particular creator. So it was created by two particular, I guess, companies. But Dragonborn is not as popular as Vanguard, obviously. Not even as popular as Luck and Logic, if we get to it. But the game was just a convoluted mess of rules, and it was definitely a particular issue for people to get into, but it didn't last long at all. Poor support, and if anything, I'm actually going to put it in F. I think this might be the first F class game. It was just not that great, to be honest. So yeah, definitely unfortunate there, but I'm not going to say anything more about an F class game, so let's move on. Let's talk about Naruto. Naruto is definitely an amazing game in terms of rules. The gameplay is actually quite amazing. The only thing was, I guess it wasn't supported enough by the different characters, the organization or the marketing team. It just couldn't continue on, and it was just out of their budget. But in terms of card artwork alone as well, backed up by obviously a great series, the game is definitely something that I rate pretty highly, maybe even as high as Dragon Ball Super as well. It's just a really great game, so yeah, I think I'm happy with keeping it at B tier. Moving on for One Piece, we have a similar case. Not as popular as Naruto because gameplay wasn't as great. Card artwork is not too bad, definitely similar to Naruto's, but at the same time it didn't last nowhere as long as Naruto. Naruto lasted almost, I think, did it last 10 years? It lasted a long time, and that's a lot to say about a card game, you know. But yeah, with One Piece it didn't last as long, just a few years, but it was definitely a bit of nostalgia into it as well. Would I give it a B tier? Maybe at the very low point of a B tier, just barely making it, but it is definitely something that pushes me there in terms of nostalgia, in terms of the anime that kind of supports it, that has nothing to do with the card game, of course, but yeah, it's just something that is enjoyable to collect. Moving on, let's talk about Force of Will. Force of Will, now, if you guys have actually seen, I think the channel's Alpha Investments, I actually watched a few of his videos where he talks about kind of like a downfall of Force of Will and how they're doing things, but then at some point later on in time it started to improve. In this case, I think it deserves a C tier. It's like one of those games where you're genuinely setting the baseline here for most card games. It was popular enough that you generated enough of a community, but at the same time there were certain mishaps that really just dragged it down, and this was also one of those games where I genuinely considered getting into, just like My Little Pony, though I'd say to a smaller degree. So I think it deserves somewhere here between My Little Pony and Chaotic. Alright, so moving on, let's talk about, let's see, I want to talk about the new Boruto Naruto card game. Gameplay wise, not as great. It's very complex actually, so not as great as the original Naruto. Collectability in terms of the cards itself probably might be the driving force. It is also a new game from I think 2019 I believe, so definitely something very big here, very significant, and the only thing that most people have a problem with is the gameplay itself. It's just not living up to the expectation of Naruto. Would I put it in C class? No, I might put it in D class, maybe even below Weecross, but maybe just above ZX. Definitely a fair spot to put there for the game itself. Moving on here, we have Luck and Logic. Luck and Logic is a game that probably one of the most complex games ever in terms of gameplay. The learning curve is incredibly high, incredibly steep, and yeah, you're gonna have a hard time learning the game, that's for sure. The card artwork definitely looks nice, but it was poorly supported. The card game ended after 3 sets, so definitely very disappointed there, but yeah, it definitely does not deserve a C, that's for sure. A D maybe, but I actually might put this here in E as well. I think similar case to Dragon Ball Z, it just never took off as big, and because of that it only lasted 3 sets, and that's saying a lot about a game that deserves an E tier class, so we're just going to keep it there for now. Let's talk about this here. So Ninjago. Ninjago was mostly based on the TV show, and of course it's Lego. It was mostly based on the Spinjitzu. I guess it's similar to Beyblade, but it's obviously spinning them by hand, and you basically have these Lego minifigures fight against each other, but you also have these cards to support it as well, and you genuinely build a deck to play it. So I do think that it deserves a place somewhere. D tier, yeah. It's just something that is not targeted for an older audience. I think even teens have no interest in the game itself, so I'm just going to put it right here. But definitely does a lot better than Luck and Logic and Dragon Ball Z. Alright, so moving on here, we have Kaijudo. Kaijudo is honestly, card game wise and marketing wise, it's probably better than Duel Masters. So it might actually be a C, maybe even a solid B. Yeah, it's not too bad at all. Definitely interesting. It brings back nostalgia for a bit of Duel Masters, but the only thing that's really keeping me out of it is the lack of community, the lack of player base, so that's a problem there. Speaking of which, with Duel Masters, putting it at C tier, it was just, you know, it was one of those nostalgia games, definitely better than Chaotic, definitely better than Force of Will or My Little Pony, but just not enough for it to make it into B class. Am I being a bit too harsh here for such a nostalgic game? Perhaps I am, but it just feels so wrong to put it in C, doesn't it? I mean, it deserves B, right? Gameplay wise, it was actually not too bad, so I'll put it here, and Kaijudo would probably go. Should I put Kaijudo in A? That's a bit too much. No, that's a bit too much. Kaijudo I'll put in the very highest of B tier, but Duel Masters a bit lower. I think that's a good place for it. Moving on, let's talk about Bakugan. The original Bakugan, the old one, a lot of people definitely enjoyed it, but there wasn't a big establishment on the rules of the game, so because of that, the game didn't, well, it actually lasted quite a bit, so I wouldn't say it's necessarily bad, but it did come to a stopping point. simply because people didn't promote the, I guess, gameplay tournaments too big, and overall the marketing just didn't help as well with everything for the game. But overall it was fun, incredibly fun playing the game itself. I mean, should I put it here? I mean, it should go higher. It's one of those nostalgic games on a similar basis as the rest, and I think it would deserve a place in B tier. It was definitely something that I love collecting. I have a lot of the old Bakugan. I mean, the new Bakugan now is obviously very different. But yeah, the old Bakugan, I actually collected quite a bit of them, and played the games with a lot of my friends back in school, so definitely very fun. But yeah, I think B tier is okay. Now, very controversial, of course, we have Bakugan Battle Planet, the new one that actually came out, I think, in 2018. Might have been 2019, but not too sure there. It was somewhere around there, but it was very new, of course, and it still is continuing. The only problem is the price. Even if you're actually working now and you have a job to pay for this, still very expensive to play the card game itself, and you just can't help but collect a lot of these Bakugan. So yeah, despite the fact that it hasn't been out for long, there's so many Bakugan to just already start collecting, and you just can't keep up. So for the price point, it does go at a very low spot, but gameplay wise, it has established rules and it is quite fun. Beats Kaijudo, beats in fact every card game I'm mentioning over here right now. I'll say Bakugan has better gameplay than every single one right here. Maybe not on par with Naruto. Naruto has a very good gameplay, but Bakugan itself, for Bakugan Battle Planet, I don't know, it's a bit too nice to give it A tier, but should I give it A tier? You know what, I think I'll give it an A tier. I'll put it as the first A tier. Why? I think it's definitely well marketed compared to the original Bakugan. Its gameplay is on par with Naruto. The fact that you get to collect actual, I guess, collectible figurines, if you want to call it that, and you actually get to have a much more intimate or interactive gameplay, it's just definitely fun, and it really is unique from every other card game. And I would also put the original one as well on A tier, had it not been for the poor promotion of the actual game itself. You know, I never heard about the tournaments. I've never heard about people engaging in it. I never knew that they even had a community outside of just me and every other kid in school. So yeah, Bakugan just didn't last as long, and it seems like the new one's actually been doing pretty well for itself. A lot of people might argue the opposite, but I think that's just nostalgia playing into the picture here, and I don't want nostalgia to be the thing to beat it over. So I'm actually going to say that Bakugan Battle Planet is better than the original Bakugan game. Might be an unpopular opinion here, but I'm just going to go with that for now. But yeah, moving on now, let's talk about Y Schwartz, a less popular game from Bushiroad. Very balanced game, definitely a fair game, but it does get pretty boring. I have actually played the games before. I've even owned several decks in the past, but the game wasn't supported as well. A lot of people just continue to play the Japanese version and not the English version, so it had its problems, and I don't think I would put it any higher than C. Maybe I might put it in D, because it has that similar case with Wii Cross as well. But overall, I don't know. I mean, it has a community, that's for sure. It's just that the community just continues to play the Japanese version quite a bit over the English version, because the English version is not as properly supported. It was a game that I was considering getting into, but overall, it's more so just like based on the anime that you want to play. Recently it came out with a JoJo's version of the game, of a particular set, so it seemed kind of fun for me to actually get into White Schwartz. Even right now I'm thinking, should I get into it? But you know, with me wanting to focus now on Bakugan, Yu-Gi-Oh, and maybe even returning to Vanguard full time again, White Schwartz just doesn't seem to be worth the slot getting into. So for that particular reason, I'm going to keep it at D tier. Let's see, what else do we have here? We have Buddyfight. Buddyfight is another game that's made by Bushiroad, bit more popular than White Schwartz. Has a bigger community than White Schwartz. You could definitely find a community to play with, and they do play with English cards as well, so that's great. The only thing is that it just doesn't have that complexity like Naruto or Vanguard, but the gameplay is definitely fun. I've engaged in the card game before, so definitely quite nice here. Would I put it in B tier? B for Buddyfight? Yeah, why not? I'll put it in B tier. Definitely not a particularly high game, but I think it deserves a place in B tier. I mean, it still is continuing right now. I mean, that says a lot about Buddyfight. It's definitely engaging. It's something I could get into. Yeah, it's definitely something I could get into. I mean, I've only ever borrowed people's decks to play, but it is definitely a very fun game for sure, and the cards look absolutely amazing as well, so that definitely plays a huge part in me putting it in B tier. But aside from that, it just doesn't stand up to anything else. I probably might put it I'd probably put it below Bakugan, maybe below Duel. I don't know, just a bit higher, something like that. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. Let's talk about X-Wing. X-Wing was that one controversial thing, so it was kind of iffy for me to put it. It's fun, it has a great community, and there's definitely a lot of videos on YouTube that you could actually watch regarding the game and tips to play. I would have to admit that I'm not the best player at this game. I lose quite often. Definitely a strategy game that is far unique. Yeah, it's... Would I put it in C? I mean, I do own the ships. It depends on whether or not you guys are actually Star Wars fans, but I would actually put it in... it's... We're getting a bit too filled up on B tiers. You know, I'll probably put One Piece in C. You know, I'll prop X-Wing on C tier as well. It's a game I engage in, but it's not a game that I engage in to a high degree. I'm not spending crazy amounts of money on the game at all. And the last time I bought a ship for X-Wing was a long time ago, so I don't know, I put it here in C tier, but it's definitely hard to think. Think about it like this. I mean, most of you guys watching this are Yu-Gi-Oh players. X-Wing, it's kind of like taking Cosmos to an interactive level, if you could think about it like that. So, I don't know, I kind of want to put it higher. but I'm just going to put it right here at C. At the very, very highest form of C, and I think it deserves that place. Alright, so here we have, I guess, the big five. These are definitely the most popular games of the bunch. Right off the bat, we have Hearthstone, which is probably the least popular among the rest. Personally, I do enjoy the game. I've been playing it for a while. In fact, I started my channel on Hearthstone videos. So if you guys actually check back to my old videos, I used to make Hearthstone videos. Just go to my playlist sections. I still have playlists for my Hearthstone gameplays, so yeah, it's still there, and I've been getting into it again for the past, I don't know, the past 6 months now. I've been playing Hearthstone quite a bit. Battlegrounds have been one of the most funnest things for me to play, but yeah, it is addictive, and I think it deserves A tier for sure. Yeah. Is it as high as Bakugan? Probably not. I would enjoy Bakugan a lot more. The one good aspect about Hearthstone is it is completely budget. You don't have to spend any money on the game at all, and yeah, it's just great. So I think Hearthstone deserves a place in the A tier. Moving on, we have Pokemon. I used to play this game. I even opened packs on this channel, so yeah, if you guys remember that, then you'll know that I've actually engaged in the game before as well. My only problem with the game itself was that they removed EX cards and they have GX cards now, and now the whole tag team cards, which was just not my thing. I really enjoyed the EX cards the most with Pokemon, and the one thing I hate about, I wouldn't say hate, but the one thing I don't particularly like about card games is having a standard format where there's a rotation of sets. It kind of just defeats the purpose of me spending my money on the card game at all, knowing that the cards I buy will eventually be rotated out and I won't be able to use it at all. So because of that aspect, I'm putting it still in A tier because the cards are collectible, the artwork's amazing, gameplay is very fun. The only problem is really the rotation that is something I just don't like. So yeah, because of that, it's gonna go here. But it is a game that I've been thinking about actually returning to, though probably more for collection purposes, not for play. Magic the Gathering. Now this card game is very interesting. I have to say this, as of this video, I have attempted to get into Magic the Gathering 13 times. So the game continuously tries to get me into it, into playing the game itself, but because I've quit 13 times since 2011, I think, yeah, the first time I tried to get into Magic was back in 2011. So for 9 years, for 13 attempts, I've tried to get into Magic. I just don't like it. I mean, no matter what format I try to get into, Commander, Legacy, Modern, it just doesn't work for me. Standard, it's not something I can get into. I've borrowed decks from people before. I've bought the cards myself. I built my own decks. It's just not a gameplay that I particularly enjoy, and this ultimately does come to a personal list. Marketing is amazing, of course. The artwork is amazing. The concept behind it is great, but in terms of gameplay itself, I don't particularly enjoy it. And it just doesn't have that long-lasting effect. Out of the 13 times that I've attempted to get into the game, I have not lasted more than a week on each of them. So that kind of goes to show you where Magic is on my list. Keep in mind, this is my personal list. As a card game, it would go on S tier easily, but that's an objective view. Subjectively, in my own opinion, I don't really enjoy the game as much, and even compared to every other card game we've been talking about right now, I'd much rather get into every other card game over Magic. That's how much I don't really like it. I'm not trying to say I hate the game. Believe me, I love the artwork, and yeah, it's mainly just the gameplay itself that just isn't as enjoyable, and yeah, it's kind of like a love-hate relationship. You know what I mean? It's something where I just can't fully get into. It's definitely, yeah, but it's a subjective list. I'm not going to give it a fail. It's it goes to show why I continuously try to get into the game multiple times. So maybe I'll put it on the high part of E tier, and that would be a fair list. The final two games here, we have Vanguard and Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm putting both of them easily on S tier. They're both amazing games. there's not much else to explain about it. My whole channel is meant to be on Yu-Gi-Oh! So it makes sense that I put on S tier. It has its few ups and downs, but it's still a game that I consistently play, I still engage in. I've neglected assignments that have been due on a very close day, and I've rather built my decks instead. So yeah, Yu-Gi-Oh! Definitely takes the cake here as the top game in at least my own list. Vanguard is also a top tier game as well. Obviously it didn't come out as long as Yu-Gi-Oh! But it's still very strong right now. Obviously I was not too big of a fan of the reboot, but it was definitely still something that people could adapt to. So yeah, that's great. At least I find out that more of my older cards my older decks could be used in this current format known as Premium. So yeah, with Vanguard, I've also thought about getting back into the game again. In terms of artwork, I'd probably say it's more superior than Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon and Magic. The only problem is that obviously it's expensive to actually play the game. You would see yourself mostly wanting to rarity flex. It's kind of like Yu-Gi-Oh! In the sense where you want to max out on mermails, you want to max out on spellbooks. Yeah, it's the same case for Vanguard. You want to max out on your deck, and it's definitely quite fun there to do it. So it's going to be quite expensive, but overall I'd say they're both about the same tier. Yu-Gi-Oh! A bit more than Vanguard. As you can tell, I'm the one playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Right now, and I'm not playing Vanguard at the moment, though I'm seriously considering getting back into the game again. It's just hard to balance the two games together with the budget I have. So I kind of had to choose one over the other, but yeah, that's pretty much my list. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. This was definitely a very difficult list for me to make. I didn't realize that this video actually turned out to be this long. I was trying to make this video shorter than my previous tier list video, but I guess I had a lot to say about these particular card games. But yeah, wow, look at that list. It's actually quite neat, to be honest, and this was unintentional, of course. But yeah, this is my personal list. So if your favorite card game isn't on the top tier, then I apologize for that, but definitely leave me down your list in the comment section down below. If you guys agree with my list, then that's great. So yeah, this was definitely a fun discussion, of course, to talk about, and just fun to rank up different card games. If you guys don't actually know about some of these card games, then I guess that's one thing for you guys to actually explore yourselves. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. Definitely really amazing. Do stay tuned for the ranking of the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX characters. But yeah, definitely give this video a like, of course. Subscribe to this channel. I found out that most of my viewers on this channel is actually not subscribed to me, so yeah, if you subscribe, next time I put up a poll to vote for the next ranking video or the next tier list videos, you guys actually will be notified right away, and you guys will be able to vote for whichever video you want to see. But yeah, this was definitely something that I didn't expect to take that long, but yeah, that's pretty much it for today. So hope you guys have a great day. I'll see you next time.